Hello everyone and welcome to the Gunpla Network. I'm the Spicer and today's review of the 2011 High Grade Shining Gundam is brought to you by those wonderful people over at Canadian Gundam. Canadian Gundam is your one-stop shop for all things Gunpla and plamo here in North America. With a vast catalog, a private warehouse option, and flat rate shipping to the US and Canada, you can't beat what Canadian Gundam has to offer. When placing your next order, don't forget to use the promo code Gunpla Network to save 10% off. The GF13-017NJ Shining Gundam is the first main hero Gundam from Mobile Fighter G Gundam. The series would hit Japan's TV screens in 1994 and would be a huge departure from its predecessor in Victory Gundam. Mobile Fighter G Gundam would focus more on melee combat instead of the traditional warfare of the Universal Century, and that left a few fans a little raw. It's not everyone's favorite, it did fairly well and is usually considered to be one of the middling entries in Gundam just due to TV ratings and the sale of merchandise and things like that. However, here in the West it was the second big push for Gundam right after Gundam Wing, and while the two series are incredibly different, a lot of people here in the West tend to like G Gundam a little bit more. This melee-centric world influences the designs of every single Gundam to come out of it, and that doesn't exclude the Shining Gundam. In terms of the visual representation of this 2011 high grade, we're treated to a clean, crisp design that's almost entirely color accurate out of the box. While there are a few issues here and there, overall the look of this kit is pretty spot on. Not only is it mostly color accurate, it's pretty well proportioned. In the base mode, everything looks pretty solid aside from a minor seam line in the forearm and maybe some disproportionate stuff on the head. Speaking of, starting at the top, the base head looks pretty good, but the faceplate does bother me. I'm not sure if it's just a little bit too big for the head or not, because I've gotten used to looking at it so it doesn't stand out as much now. If you see this and you think it looks a little out of scale, just be warned, I suppose, but you do get the transformed head, and I assume a lot of people will probably leave it in the transformed mode. The torso provides a little bit of the panel lining opportunity on this kit, and it is the big channel that runs down the chest. We have a circular foil sticker for the chest jewel and a piece of clear green plastic to cover it. While I haven't had too many issues with this part falling out, be warned, it is just held in with a little bit of friction and it's not really super stable, so if you put your finger on it, your finger will likely stick to it and pull it out. Just a heads up, if you want to use a little bit of glue or maybe just dry some glue or something on the outside of it to give it a little bit more friction, not a bad idea. The shoulders look good, the red and the white work really well here and provide a nice contrast. The arms are solid as well and really nothing right homed about honestly, but they work the way they're intended to. The wrists, however, are a little less okay. Much like the Master Gundam, the Shining Gundam's hands are a rubbery plastic that don't hold too well in certain poses, and the lack of friction in the wrist joint does provide a few problems when you start using some of the heavier accessories. For the most part, it's not that big of a problem, but it is something to keep in mind, especially since you have the giant shining finger in this kit. The front skirts have a little bit more of that panel lining opportunity, but the larger black channels in here are actually stickers, and since they're down in a channel, they work pretty well. I haven't had issues with them peeling up, but if you want to paint them, it should be pretty easy since they're a very clean cut line in there. The thighs work fine, but the covers on the calves are probably the worst part of this kit. Y'all know me, I try to stay as positive as possible with a lot of these reviews because I like to keep the hobby fun. But these are probably the worst piece on a piece of Gunpla I think I've built, at least in recent memory. They don't stick in very well, they don't transform very well, they have a big blue sticker on the top. They really just are not good. I would really suggest finding what mode you like this in and just super gluing those in. Just be done with it, because they're super finicky, they fall out regardless what mode, whether base or transformed. They don't look great either, so there's a lot of problems with them. It could just be me, but honestly, I think these are probably a big sticking point for a lot of people. Now, in terms of just the visuals of this piece, the stickers are probably the worst stickers on the kit, as they're going over a rounded surface, so they like to peel up. The cuts in them aren't super great, and they don't look good. Not just for the fitting, but the coloration of blue, well, it matches the rest of the blue pretty well, is I don't think exact. And honestly, I think you would probably be better off leaving this either red or just painting it. Now, that aside, everything else is pretty solid from this point down. The ankle armor has a little black sticker that goes around it, and it has peeled up a little bit more, but not a whole lot. Much like the front skirt, it's got a nice channel in there, so you don't have to worry about it coming up too much. I've pushed it down a couple of times, but since filming this review, it hasn't come back up, so it'll probably be okay. I just don't think I stuck them in there well enough, but if you do have issues, let me know in the comments down below. Now for the transformation. Honestly, this transformation really hammered home how badly I want this kit to either get a revive or like a unicorn style rail grade. Most of these parts could very easily slide around and with minor adjustments work just fine in a more complex transformation, but here they're a little simplistic. The reason I wish we had a more solid transformation is that really is the problem of this kit. It doesn't make it unstable like a lot of Wave Rider transformations, but there are just a few pieces that don't like to stick, and almost all of them are those stupid cav covers. I cannot get over how much I have a disdain for these two pieces. Like, I just cannot put into words how frustrating they are when you're trying to move them around, because even the slightest bump to the kit can knock them out. They by far are the most annoying piece in terms of falling out that I've had on any kit I can think of, especially while trying to film a review. It really just makes me want to once again super glue them in, which kind of brings me to the idea, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in a moment, of just getting two of these, because it's a fairly old, simplistic high grade, so it's not super expensive. Just get one of both, super glue those parts in, and then you have a transformed and a base version, and if you want to paint the transformed version gold, you can absolutely do so. Now, in terms of the other transforming parts, everything else works pretty well. You have two separate heads. They look good. Honestly, I don't know which one I like the best. I think the transformed one, but it's kind of, I guess, a personal preference. They both look pretty solid, honestly. Even with the faceplate on the base version seeming a little large. Like I said, I have gotten used to it, so it looks pretty good. And really, as much as I think that a lot of this could have been over-engineered, at least today, I think they could have had just a base, a transforming head. Back in 2011, they didn't really have that tech, and even now it would really be pushing the tech for a high grade. So, well, it's possible. I think part swapping in this instance is probably the best case scenario. Both of them look good. Both of them are very stable, very solid, and both scale pretty well. Now, the shoulders, the gold stickers on the insides actually work fine. I'm not a huge proponent of stickers on the outside, but whenever they're in a channel or underneath like this, they work quite well, honestly. It does stand out a little bit more, and I think paint is obviously going to look quite a bit better here, but just for having something on your shelf, they look good. They catch light very well because they're foils, so you at least have a nice looking transformation with these, and they don't peel up a lot. Now, the shoulder pieces just slide out and slide back into a different peg a little higher up. They work fine, they stick. I haven't had them fall off. And if you pull the arm out enough, you don't actually have to take the arm off of the body entirely to do it. With a little practice, it's pretty quick. Now on to the forearms, they work just as fine. You take off the blue covers, flip a little peg down, sticks out a little bit more. These aren't necessarily a problem, but when posing, do keep in mind they are on just a swivel in there. So if you bump them, they will kind of pop out, not pop out of the arm, but they will reorient themselves, so they'll be tilted to one side or the other. Not too bad. I would just say probably use those parts first or last in the transformation. Now as we move down, not a lot else changes, but those calf things, those calf covers, honestly, like I said, find the version you like, glue it in, be done with it. Or, like I said, just get 2 different ones, because these are the bane of my existence. Then the feet, they pop off, pop into a different peg, and they work fine. It's one of those things you don't really notice, and if you left the feet in either form, I don't think you'll actually notice a difference anyway, but it does help provide you a little bit more ground cover for some of those more elaborate balancing poses. Now, speaking of poses, you have a lot to play with here. I mean, you can Jaden Smith karate kit it up with a nice high kick, because the balance on this kit is awesome. You don't have any large wings coming off the back like the Master Gundam, so you're really limited only by your imagination. This really allows you to go all over the place, so all of those karate poses, for the most part, are totally viable. They take a little bit of work, but you can absolutely do it, and it's not the most frustrating kit to work with at all, except for those calf covers. Now, you can kind of get into a pseudo handstand, as you see here. It's really probably not good for posing, and I just wanted to see if I could do it, and you can, absolutely. Can't really do it with one hand, though. You're going to have to use both and use the shining fingers, so take that as you will, but just once again a testament to the balance of this kit. You also get a long and short beam saber, which is really nice to see, and apparently all the main hero kits from like the Revive series, I suppose, all have short and long beam sabers, which is cool. I didn't know that. Someone mentioned that in the unboxing. So nice to know that they're there. And for this kit, it is kind of cool because it's kind of going for like a samurai type vibe. So you have that. Play with it as you will. You have 2 hilts that honestly don't like to stay in, but I think that's just the way I'm putting them in. It's a little jank there. Now, I would have liked to see a little more personality with these, honestly, since you don't get a lot of weapons in terms of accessories here. It would have been nice to have a little more stylization on them. Like Master Asia's whip is a good example. It's got a lot of flowing pieces in it, so you could have absolutely either angled this a little bit or put some fringe down by the emitter, but it's neither here nor there. They look fine, and probably not the main thing people are looking for anyway. Now, of course, you're here for the Shining Gundam, and here you are, all of my love, anger, and sorrow. Of course, I mean the Shining Finger. You get 1 for both sides, along with 2 regular fists and 2 holding hands, plus the giant Shining Finger. Overall, the clear green plastic looks really good, and if you're good with LEDs, I bet you can absolutely pipe some light in there and really help sell that effect. I'm not good with LEDs, so of course I didn't do it, but I always like these kind of clear green effects or clear anything effects, because just a little bit of light goes a long way with them. Now, the Master Gundam's giant darkness finger worked really without any issue, but for some reason, I could not get the giant darkness finger onto the hand. I had to use a bunch of sticky tack to get it on there, which is super weird. I don't know why. The hands are very similar in terms of where they connect, so I'm a little confused by that. Could just be mine, but worst case, if you do want to use it on yours, a little sticky tack, pop it back on your shelf, and you're pretty much done. And yeah, I had to use a fair amount of sticky tack, but I think I probably used a little too much, so just kind of work with it. It's not that heavy, but it is big, so just kind of keep that in mind. It's a really neat effect, and I'm really glad it's here. Just kind of wish it would have stuck, unfortunately. Now, alongside of that, you also have the bonus of the Shining Finger sword, which is molded all in the same clear green plastic. The sword does have a lot more of the detailing that I liked on previous beam sabers, so it's cool that it's here. I just kind of wish we would have gotten something that would have looked right with it. Since it's molded all in clear green plastic, including the hilt, it would have been fine to maybe have a clear green holding hand to hold it like a Shining Finger sword. Or if we're going more anime accurate, maybe just a beam blade that popped into the existing hilt so you didn't have to have a different hand. Regardless, it's a 2011 high grade. I'm not expecting the world from it. It just would have been nice to see. However, it does work, so take that as you will. The range of motion and accessories, though, is absolutely undeniable on this kit. Not only are you going to get some cool anime accurate poses, you can get some very anime inaccurate poses and do weird handstands and stuff. Now, with the Master Gundam, we have a nice pair that can duke it out on your shelf. Not only do they look great next to each other, but with the Shining and Darkness fingers, you can have a much more interesting fight visually than a lot of your counterparts in, say, the Universal Century line. They're complementary, well, they stand out a lot in terms of color scheme and everything. They match quite a bit, quite well size-wise and proportion-wise, and of course, accessory-wise. You can even do a poor excuse for a JoJo reference if you want one. Overall, while I think this kit does have its flaws, like those cav covers, because that's really the biggest flaw and I hate those things, it's pretty solid. Honestly, if you're a fan of G Gundam or some of the more martial arty poses in Gunpla, or just want something a little different, I would honestly recommend picking up 2 of these. Not to sell more model kits, but just so you don't have to deal with those calf covers. They are the absolute bane of my existence. I really, there are certain kits, like a lot of the older real grades, that will just leave you frustrated. This individual part has left me frustrated. It, of course, isn't hard to build. It's a singular piece. The sticker goes on fairly well, although it doesn't like to stay on. But it just does not stay in, and moving such a cool, posable figurine, or model kit in this instance, really just gets irritating when you have one part popping off, and it's a big part, so it's hard to lose. But if you're going to lose anything, it's either this or that clear green plastic cover in the chest. But like I said, still glue, and I haven't had any issues. So if you're a fan of the show, absolutely great idea. If you're a fan of very posable mobile suits or just the design, yeah. If you prefer a more UC style traditional warfare, this might be a pass for you. And to answer all your questions, yes, it fits on Funsaiki. As always, friends, I've been the Spicer here for the Gunpla Network. In those comments down below, let me know what you think of this. Do you have it? Are you on the fence? And can I answer any questions for you? I've been the Spicer here for the Gunpla Network. Please stay safe, friends, and keep on building.